And a good Monday evening to you, wherever you might be. Friends, Romans, and countrymen, boys and girls, lend me your ear or your ears, both your ears. How's that? We have a tremendous guest on tonight, Kate Delaney. She's coming in now, and I think that you are going to enjoy the show tonight. Let's see if she ventures in, and there she is. Hi, Kate.
Hello, how are you?
I am just fine for a Monday. So,
I understand about Mondays.
yeah, this was one of those days that I couldn't get out of my own way. Uh,
I've
you ever had days like that?
had plenty of those kinds of days.
Yeah. Sometimes I can't even push myself away from myself. You know what I mean? It's just, I get all discombobulated, tangled up. So, sometimes self and I don't get along too well, but nonetheless, it's good to see you again.
It's good to see you as well.
So, I was telling people, let me put this up here. Hello, Scott. Hope you're doing well tonight. Uh, I was telling people that we have a super duper whooper whopper show tonight because this is a lady that covers just about anything and everything. And we're delighted to have you all the way from Texas. Is that correct?
That's right. One of my many stops of Georgia. I grew up on the East Coast and I've lived everywhere in between. I think I've lived in every quadrant of the United States. So the South, the West, wherever.
Wow. Wow. That's like I'm a rambling man, that song. But this, in your case, I'm a rambling lady. So, yeah.
Yeah, Johnny Cash, Johnny Cash. I've been everywhere. And so, I don't always boast about that, but it's true. I've been everywhere. Maybe not the same places and the same dives as Johnny, although I love Johnny Cash. I've been in a lot of places.
Wow. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Where you got started. I mean, where you grew up, where you got started, and all that good stuff.
I grew up in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, so it's probably like 15 minutes from downtown Philly. It's right there, close to the Walt Whitman Bridge, I guess, not too far from the Walt Whitman Bridge. And I grew up in a family where my uncle played hockey. His name's Bernie Perrant. He was the goaltender for the Philadelphia Flyers, and I had an uncle who was a jockey, and his two sons are trainers. One of them actually was the trainer for a horse called Smarty Jones that almost won the Triple Crown. It was a horse out of Philadelphia Park. So I grew up around sports. I wasn't like a tomboy, but I grew up around sports, and I went to a school in the Midwest, and I was a journalism major. And at one of my stops, I was in El Paso. And when I was in El Paso, one of the guys I worked with said, "I think you know more about sports than I do. I'm going to go away and get engaged this week, and I'm going to beg them to let you fill in because I want to marry this very pretty, sexy woman. And I think you can handle the gig of being in front of the camera and doing the sports." So he actually helped me by doing that, and it kind of led me down the sports path after that.
How old were you then?
Oh, I was 22.
22. Wow.
Yeah.
I watched a video uh, of you the other day, and you were talking about finding your own locker room. I thought that was pretty cool, and I think that's the video I watched where you come out on stage and you was carrying this big heavy bag, this big heavy bag. Uh, Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, so what happened was when I filled in, I kind of got the sports bug. I mean, I'm like a content junkie, so I like all of it. I like humor. I'm all about, the comedians, and I've even done a little stand up, and I like business. I like it all. And sports was definitely in my arsenal, and I got a taste for it when I filled in. So I assumed, and because the guys at the station I worked at were really supportive of me, that it would be easy for me to get a job in sports, but it wasn't. I got rejected 500 times, 500, George, before I finally got a true break in sports. And it wasn't because men were denying me. In fact, a lot of men were helping me, but the men that were the gatekeepers didn't think a woman could really handle sports, because you'd have mostly men that would be watching where they really want to watch a woman doing sports, not just on the sidelines, but really running the show, being the anchor, or being, in the case of radio, the talk show host.
Wow. There is and I've got some thingies up here. You can find Kate on her Facebook page. There she is. Go check her out. A lot of interesting stuff on there. I got some kind of squeaky echo going on here. But anyhow, I hate when I hear myself in the echo. Then you can find her on katedelaneyradio.com. And you're on how often, Kate?
Oh, I'm on 6 days a week. And then if I do more CBS, then it's even more than that. The show that I do now, I've done for, I guess, over a decade, and it's called America Tonight. And I do a feature in that show called Invade the Man Cave. But the show, it also has business and politics and whatever else I think moves the needle. So between the combination of all of it, I'm usually on 6 days a week.
Wow. What do you do in your spare time?
Well, I'm married, and in my spare time, it's so interesting because, George, lately there really has not been much spare time, but I would be, gosh, I like to play golf if it was kind of that, if we weren't so much deep into this pandemic, I'd probably be playing more golf, but I like to play golf. And we have a dog, a brand new puppy. It seems like I'm always walking him. And I like to watch crazy thriller movies and mafia movies, and I'm a movie hound. And I like to play cards too, so I play a lot of cards. I used to live in Vegas, and I had some guys in Vegas really teach me how to not run the cards, but how to really play. And I kind of got into playing cards.
And my friend Derek out of Pittsburgh. Salute to you, Kate. Perseverance through 500 no's is a motivational thing. Yeah. When you carried that bag out there, you said you took a whole bunch out and you had like, what 30 or 300 of them in there, whatever the number was. But it would have been impossible for you to tote one with 500 rejections in it. But I thought that went over well with the audience, and it proved the point that regardless of what you come up against, if you're looking for your locker room, you've got to take those no's on the chin, roll with the punches, and keep on going, right?
Yeah, and I think that's the key thing. And I learned that through so many of the superstar athletes I covered, and business people that were rock stars, and other people I've come across, George, that most of the super successful people I know have had to persevere. It might not have been 500 rejections. It could have been something else, but whatever their locker room was, there was something that was stopping them from achieving what they thought their destiny was. And could they persevere and keep going, or did they give up and decide, no, this is too much? And a lot of people give up because it's hard. I mean, listen, at the part of that, most of that, I was single. And I used to say, boy, I got a lot of first dates, but then they'd come into my apartment that was in a beautiful area at one point in California, overlooking Pismo Beach. But they would see that I had wallpaper that was covered with rejections, and they probably thought, oh, what's up with this broad? She's got rejections all over her wall. So it was tough, but totally worth it, because I knew I had to do this. That I wouldn't have fulfilled. I didn't want to live with regret. And I knew I wouldn't have fulfilled what I thought I could do, what I knew I could do, if I let that stop me.
Let's talk about that for a moment, and then we'll get into some of the people that you've spoken to over the years. Find your locker room. boy, girl, man, woman, regardless of who it might be, find your locker room. Uh, that echo. I hate myself, uh, and I don't know why. But nonetheless, there's too many people in their own comfort zone, and they're afraid to get out of it. Is that correct?
Right, because it's easy to stay where you are, even though you have these kind of niggly things in the back of your head that are kind of rattling around. But it's easy to stay in the comfort zone and not, like as you call it, and not reach for as far as you want to go. I mean, here's what I say. I think that most people limit themselves by dreaming too small. That really you want to have a crazy dream, because what's the worst that can happen? If you leap, don't worry, the net will catch you and you'll end up someplace great anyway. And I think that we limit ourselves based on sometimes the people around us and what they tell us, our own self-limiting beliefs, and you have to kind of block that. I always say that you need raving fans. So whether you have hundreds of raving fans or one raving fan, you want to pay attention to them, because they're the ones that are going to help you get through whatever it is you're going to have to get through to get to that locker room. And the locker room could be anything. I mean, it could be that you sell Maseratis and you want to sell more than one a month. It could be that you have a farm and you're struggling right now, but there are some innovative things you could do. But it might be a little bit out of your comfort zone again. And if you would just kind of school yourself in it, perhaps you could go in a different direction that would make the farm survive and perhaps even thrive. I mean, I could give you examples from people I worked with. There was a guy that I knew that had a flower shop, and of course he had massive, in New York City, he had massive competition around him, and he was starting to get clobbered, and the taxes were too much and the rent was too high. And I asked him, what was his wow? What was he telling people he did? Well, I have a flower shop. No, you put smiles on people's faces and you make it okay for a guy who screwed up to go home. And so he started to have kind of pithy statements that he put out there that attracted attention, and he drew in more business and he threw in other value adds, but he started paying more attention to, I'm not just selling flowers, I'm selling smiles. I'm changing people's lives, whether someone's sick and they have cancer and this just cheers them up, or whatever it is.
Let me give you an example. I grew up in the 50s and early 60s. And during that time, in our neck of the woods, it was traditional. And I'll use that term for lack of a better term. But it was kind of traditional that you graduate from high school, you go in the service, or you find a job, you get married, have kids, you get a job, and you stay in that job like forever. When you retire, they give you a gold watch, and the rest is history. There wasn't, to my recollection, and I'm sure I missed a lot, which I really did. I missed a lot. But to my recollection, there wasn't a whole lot of people that said, reach for your dream, get a hold of a dream, uh, grab a star, and all those cliches. I don't recall of hearing that, if at all. I'm sure I did, but it went by me. But I didn't hear that. Here's how it is. It's cookie cutter type stuff, because we did this, you guys do this, and then the next people come along, they do that, and so on and so forth. And I look back now at people that I grew up with, that some of them went on to do very good things, some great things. But for the most part, and I often sit back and I wonder how many of those kids that I grew up with sit back today and say, what if? You see what I'm saying? Because it wasn't something that people, you wasn't motivated to do that. You was motivated to graduate, get a job, go on the service, get married, have kids. That was the motivation. Uh, Other than that, but today I was thinking, my goodness, if I was a young guy again, I'd tear this world. I mean, I'd tear it upside down. You'd think that there was 10 or 15 Espinlavs running around the world. My wife always says, "No, we don't need more than one. That's enough." But what do you tell these young people, young ladies, young men? What do you tell them when the naysayers come? Because they'll gang up on you, the naysayers. Uh, what do you tell them when somebody comes and tries to squish your dream?
Well, that's easy. If it's really, and whether this is a good friend or not, if it's a repeated pattern and it's bringing you down, because that's going to be planted in your head, sometimes you have to make the hard choice of changing friends. You know, sometimes it's about this: friends for life, friends for a season, friends for a reason. And I know I've been there, and it's very, very tough to do. But I've had plenty of naysayers around me, and I realize, boy, if the people around me are feeding me negativity, like, why are you doing this? Why don't you just deal blackjack and stay in Vegas? You'll make a ton of money. Oh, you're smart. You could go to law school. Why do you want to be in a man's world? Why do you want to be in a locker room? Why do you want to keep banging your head against a glass ceiling? Then they're not supporting me. They're not lifting me up. They're not helping me, especially if I'm down. And I tell anyone younger, I said, it might be hard for you to do this, but it's important that people around you, no matter how crazy your ideas are, you can get solid feedback from them. But if they're pulling you down and away from what you really want to do, why is that? Is it because they're worried that you're going to be successful and that you're going to be out of reach for them, which hopefully you wouldn't be that kind of person? But is it because they fear that they haven't done that? They haven't pursued their dreams. So, boy, they don't want you to get comfortable, all of a sudden decide I'm out of the comfort zone. You want your posse to stay where they are. And that's a big part of it. So you have to be able to step away from that and examine what is somebody's motives. Why are they constantly giving you the negative feedback on what it is that you really want to do?
Maybe that's where the old cliche came: misery likes company.
Yeah.
You know, uh, I'm miserable. I haven't succeeded. I haven't been able to reach for my dreams. I don't want you to do it either, which is totally insane, as far as I can tell. Did you ever want to do anything other than uh, become involved in sports?
Well, sports or news talk or any of that. No. And speaking and writing, of course, because I have 4 books out. So I did want to do that, and I am doing that. But no, I knew when I was in high school this is what I wanted to do, and I just really kind of stuck to it. I stuck to it in college. I There was one point, there was a guy that I was dating who convinced me when I was going through a valley of, oh, I can't get anything, that, "Ooh, you're so smart, you should be an investment banker," where I started to go down that road. And I hated it, George. I love the guys around me. I like numbers and I like business. But I was like, whoa, I'm not going to live with this regret. And so I didn't do it. I probably would have made a ton of money at the time. But there was the temptation, but not enough, because I just really knew I have to stick with what I want to do. I don't want to live with the if. I don't like that. I didn't want to live with the regret. And I'm very, very happy that I didn't do it. Very.
I wonder how many people in their life have found themselves in that particular boat.
I
Uh,
think a lot. I think a lot of people.
yeah. Uh, you said that you love to write. Let me put this up here for us. And here is your latest book: Deal Your Own Destiny. Increase your odds, win big, and become extraordinary. Wow. Uh, People can get that on Amazon.com. Let me put this up here for you. There's where you can get the book. Amazon.com. Do your own destiny. Wow. How long's that been out, Kate?
It's been out about a year and year and a half, almost a year and a half. And it was great. Here's what happened. I had self-published a couple of books, and then Forbes talked to me and said, we want to do your story. And initially we were going to rewrite a book I wrote called Invade the Man Cave. And they said, no, we want more of you in it and more of your advice and more of what you're doing on the stage too. And I said, okay. And then we went down that path. And that's the book I put together. The things that I was talking about when people were asking me, how'd you do it? How'd you overcome the rejections? How did you move forward? Who did you meet? What did they tell you? So all of that's in there, and practical takeaways that it's not about me and everybody else preaching to you what to do. It's okay, here's some things that you can work on. And in the chapters, there's those call outs of, hey, do this, do that, try this. I challenge you to surround yourself with raving fans, find out who they are, that kind of thing. And I really had a great time, George, doing it. I loved doing that book.
When, after you filled in for this fella, you still got rejections after that?
Oh yeah. I mean, it's that I had that assumption that I did well, but there was no opening there. And I mean, even the news director at that television station told me, wow, if I have an opening, I would hire you in a second. But they weren't going to have an opening. It was in a popular place in California. And I liked the guys I worked with. They weren't going to move on. So I started to send out tapes, and I would get, rejection after rejection after rejection. And finally, and people helped me change things, and they did new segments, and it didn't seem to matter. And finally, enough of it was going on that I had people tell me, listen, you're not thinking this way because that's not your mindset. And you have so many guys around you that are so supportive, but they're the guys that are the gatekeepers, the men that are the gatekeepers. They don't think that women belong there. So you're getting knocked out because of that.
Did that make you mad?
Yes. Oh, I say that, in that movie, The Mask, you see Jim Carrey, how his eyes get huge and he turns a different color. Here's the story. I went to the mailbox one day, and I was in California, and it was number 350 or 60 or whatever it was. And I got this, and it was from somebody back east. And I got this rejection note, and the guy in the note said, it's in my book. He said, hey, you're attractive. You sound great on camera. Women do not belong in the locker room. Women don't belong in sports, and women are more suited for easy breezy morning television talk shows, and you'd be perfect there. And I was like, oh, George, no matter what, I was going to find a way to get in. I was going to find a way to do it. And I did eventually.
I always say, sometimes I get so mad, it makes me spit sideways. But that anger can motivate you. Like you said, I'm going to find a way, Now this is number 360. I'm really getting bent out of shape over this, and there's going to be a way. There's got to be a way. What Grandma used to say, where there's a will, there's a way. I'm going to find me a way to get this thing done. I don't care. That madness or that anger can push you in the right direction, that you all of a sudden become locked in, focused, head down, and you're going for it, right?
Absolutely. I think that's part of it. It's that intent and desire that, like, desire is easy. You desire to make $1 million. You desire to do whatever. But what's your intent? Do you really have the intent? Are you focused? How bad do you really want it? Are you grinding it out? The Marines have one of my favorite sayings of all time: embrace the suck. So I embrace the suck. That's what I do. I just know if I really want it, I'm pulling out the gaps, I'm pulling out the stops, and I'm going to figure out a way to try to make it happen. And I see this over and over again. So by the way, once you get to where you think you want to go, you never arrive at your destination. You're constantly moving and going.
That's a good point. That's a good point. Because so many people get to where they want to go, and it's all like okay, I'm here now, and you know, but there's got to be that continual drive, drive. I always told people over the years on the radio, and now that we're doing this too, if I can hear a person's heartbeat, I can understand that's a real person. A lot of people can say the right words at the right time to the right people in the right situation, but you've got to have a heartbeat that somebody can hear and understand. This person isn't just using flowery words or flattery. This is the person's real heartbeat, and they've got a drive behind them. When after after 360, and that person really bent you out of shape, what happened after that?
Well, what started to happen is I was doing television news and I was filling in, like, I was filling in on the side on radio doing some sports. And then guys in television and sports and also in radio were trying to help me. And I was doing sports, filling in. And one day, a guy who used to be the vice president of the Cincinnati Reds heard me on the radio. He was driving down the central coast of California, and it's funny how when you're unlisted, somebody can find you. Well, he found me, called me up, and he said, "I want to have a conversation with you, and I'm buying a radio station right by where you are, and I want you to do a talk show. I want you to do a talk show for me. Will you come and see me?" So I went to see him, and he said, "You could do this. I've listened to you. I've gone up and down the coast now. As soon as I found you, I knew I had to find you." And he said, "You would do an hour talk show." And I said, "Ooh, I don't know that I can fill an hour." He said, "You could fill 6 hours. Trust me. I've been listening to you. You could fill six." So I don't know. Was that a compliment? And his name is Roger Blameyer, and he became a huge mentor to me, and he was fabulous. He hired me. He completely understood. He got it. He helped me. He mentored me. We would have great big names on the show. I mean, you just name them, whoever. Of course, anybody who was the Cincinnati Red, but beyond that, I mean, we had them all on the show, and it was an incredible experience. And I really got a lot. I gained some more chops, I think, from that, and he's helped me with my confidence even more. And we're still in touch today. We're still friends, and he still watches to see what's happening with me, and it's just was the greatest thing.
That's got to give him a warm, fuzzy feeling inside.
It does. He says that he heard me one day when I was on CBS, and this was a couple of months ago, and he said, he called me up and he said, "It's so exciting to hear you. I'm in Palm Springs and I heard you. I was in an Uber and I heard your voice." And I was like, she still has the voice and it's perfect. And, the thing that happened there for him, he said to him, it was the give back. And he wanted a few people he knew to be able to do well. And he said he knew I had the talent. I just didn't have somebody that was there pushing or fighting for me or helping me. And he became that guy, and he opened a door for me that I don't know would have been opened or not. But it also illustrates something for everybody who's watching this or listening to this, whichever one you're doing, because we know people do both. Here's the thing: whenever you get an opportunity, really grab that opportunity. Don't think like, "Oh, well, I'm just filling in," or "This is a holiday," or "This is whatever." Because here he was in the middle of nowhere, driving down the coast of California. How would I know who was listening to me? And because he heard me and he liked what he heard, that led to him pursuing me for this talk show.
That leads me to this, and I said it the other night to someone about never giving up. What happens if all of a sudden you throw your hands up in the air, throw yourself on the floor, kick your feet, and you say, "That did it. I quit. I'm done. I'm out of here." And then 30 minutes later, a day later, a week later, you know what I mean? It all comes back around and says, "Man, Espinlaw, you blew it." I mean, 30 minutes. That if you'd have hung on 30 minutes more, look what could have happened. The door was ready to come open.
Yeah.
Uh, and we just can't give up. There you are, uh, like old Red Skeleton, Clem Cadiddlehopper. I just walking down the street, mind my own business. Uh, you were doing what you were doing, and you had no idea this man was driving down the road listening, and just out of the blue. That's
Exactly.
that's why it's so important that we just don't quit. Uh, quit 1,000 times, but don't quit. If that
Right. I love that you say that because that is so true. And I think people give up pretty easy. I think it gets hard and then they decide they want to give up. And hey, who am I to tell everybody what to do? But I've seen it time and time again with guys I worked with that were producers and they had these great opportunities because I flew with the Cowboys and I had and I still have amazing opportunities. So people that were producing for me got to be at the US Open or all these great places. But then they would say, well, I could make more money doing banking, or I could do this, or I could do that. But then they would give up their job and they would call me up and say, oh, I want to come back. I'm not happy. And I always warn them about that you might not like it if you have some tough hours in broadcasting, but if you go into something else and this is really your passion, I'm not telling you what to do, but don't live with that regret. And I've seen it probably with 10 people in my career.
Yeah, yeah, and that's got to eat somebody up. I mean
Uh,
that would make me so mad at myself. I think I'd take myself down through the backyard and just beat myself sideways. Uh, if I did such a thing, we all get disgusted, but it don't mean we have to quit. Uh, tell me something. Once you came on board with this radio station, and this man began to mentor you, and so on and so forth. Is that when the doors started to swing open a little bit?
the doors swung open for me, realizing I definitely have this, I can do this, and in pursuing bigger opportunities, I know I can do it. So if I get whatever that job is, the next job is on the rung, I'll be okay. I can do it. And I did finally get some of the other opportunities, but I still had a lot of doors I had to burst through because Roger gave me the opportunity, but he couldn't open those other doors. He gave me the opening, but I had to still do the things that made me successful in going, to big markets. Like I worked at WFAN in New York, which is the biggest sports radio station in the country, and I was on the ticket in Dallas and KRLD, and I had to work to get those for sure. But it was about finding the right man actually that thought, okay, she's going to get ratings. And I think it's fair if your job is to get ratings, or like with one of the shows I do, affiliates, then I'm good with that. And if I'm not doing that and that's not happening, okay, well, that has nothing to do with gender or anything else. It's that people don't like me. I'm not entertaining enough. I'm not doing what I need to do. And I think that's fair. But to not get a fair shake was tough, on those times before and then those times afterwards. I'll give you a great example. And this is also in my book, and it makes a lot of men furious when I talk about this. Because remember, George, I'm the friend of the man. Men have helped me. I love men. My mother used to say, when you get married, it's going to be men that are going to be all on the side of where's all the women? There's going to be all men on the other side. So one of the things that happened to me, and I thought this was going to be a huge break at the time, it was a Fox that started up a network. They started up a radio network, and somebody I knew the guy who was starting it up, and he had been in Dallas, and they told me get in touch with him, and I did. So I thought, well, at least I would have a shot. And I called him up, talked to him, oh, you're great, send me your stuff. And then later come to learn a couple of weeks later that there's names on the board. Some of them are pretty famous, people that you've probably heard of that are on NBC now and other places, and their names were on the board. They were all men, and then my name was on the board. And when they came to my name, there were three people in the room. One was a woman, and one was going to be the program director, a guy, and they both knew me. And then this GM. And when they came to my name, they said, "Oh, Kate would be great. She's easy talent. She's easy to get along with. She's got a big Rolodex. She knows people. The guys love her, and we could pair her with somebody, and they'd be great. They'd be a great duo, and it'd be a piece of cake, and they'd probably get ratings." And the guy said, "I don't like women on radio, and I especially don't like them in sports. Erase her name from the board." So that was probably at the time, I mean, $175,000 gig plus whatever else that would have entailed. And I thought that would have been a really big break for me, because I would have had a network show, and it would have been real easy for me to slide into that spot. They were right about that. But he had a block about women, and I didn't know that, because that's not what was portrayed by him to me. I mean, he even said she gets ratings, but see, again, that also shows you also don't know, for everybody listening, you don't know what goes on behind with the decision. So if you get rejected from something, don't assume you're sucky. You didn't have it, you weren't good. Right. They have a preconceived notion about whatever it is they saw on a resume, or thought they heard about you, or whatever it might be. And a lot of times you'll never, ever know what that is. Or they have somebody in mind because it's a good friend of theirs, offspring, or niece or nephew, and hey, there is nepotism, and if they're good and they get slid in there, you'd have no idea. That's why you didn't get the job.
Scallywags. I'm at the age now that I'm at that. I don't care. I don't care age. You know what I'm saying? Just flat out scallywags. And if there's anything I don't like, and never did like, people that have plastic faces. I've told people to their face, don't get your face too close to the heat, because it's going to melt. Because that plastic face you got on, that's just a facade. The real ugly you is behind that plastic. But I'm at the point now, I just don't care. And these scallywags that hide behind this, or duck behind this, or scoot out around the corner for this, and then let somebody else do their stuff. I just have no time for it. I'll give you, for instance, Kate. I play a lot of music on the radio from indie artists, people that aren't signed with the big record company. Of course, there's only big record companies left. But these people are diamonds in the rough, and some of them are just actually polished diamonds. But because they don't know this or that or those or these, the big label, the big this, the big that isn't reaching for them. And I've often said, these are some of the greatest artists that you're ever going to hear. You've probably never heard them before. You might never hear them again. But on this program, you're going to hear some great, great people. And that's what I like to go looking for. I like to go looking for the nuggets that everybody else kind of kicked around, kicked over, threw it over here, put it under there. That's what I like to do. I like to find the people that I can hear their heart beating, and throw them out there and put the spotlight on them and say, see, you passed this up once. It's your loss, not theirs. It's your loss. When did you get that first big? When did you get into the locker room?
The first real big locker room break was when I was doing a syndicated show called Sports Fan Radio, and of course they weren't really. I was kind of that polished diamond that I wasn't getting a lot of the attention, but I had, again, great guys around me. They were helping me. It was a good scenario to put me someplace else. And they heard me in Dallas, and they came after me and offered me a contract. And I went to Dallas, and I went to the Dallas Cowboys. I was working, and a guy named Chuck Cooperstein, who is the voice of the Dallas Mavericks now, he said to me, hey, if you're going to be on the radio in where you are in Dallas, and people are going to listen to you, and these athletes are going to listen to you. If you're going to criticize them, praise them, whatever, you need to look them in the eye. You, even though you don't have to do that for your job, you're the talk show host, and it's about opinion and all of that. You should go and meet you should go and meet them. You should go to a couple of the games so that they know who you are. And I took his advice, and I did that. And the first locker room I went into was the Dallas Cowboys locker room. And I guess I should have been flattered, because when I went to the front desk, the guy who was behind the desk said, "Are you here for the cheerleader tryouts?" I was like, "Yes, finally. Someone thinks I'm a cheerleader. Okay, please, that sounds good to me." So, and he was very nice, and he just didn't realize. And I said, "No, no, no." And I went down to the locker room, and Troy Aikman was there, and I shook his hand. His hand was so big, I thought he was going to break my hand. And he was very nice, and Emmett Smith was there, and Michael Irvin was there, and it was during that time, and that was the first really big break. And it was great, because in Dallas, and I learned this, that if you know your stuff and you're just professional, they don't care. None of the athletes gave me any kind of a hassle whatsoever. They answer the questions. It wasn't a problem.
So I mean, they gave you the respect right off the get-go then, right?
Yep. I mean, even there was a guy named Nate Newton, who was a big offensive lineman. And I was doing the ticket was smart. They got it. They promoted me. Of course, they hired me. They're going to make their money. And I did a remote from a place called Medieval Inn, and it was on Monday night football nights. And we had all kinds of giveaways, and I was broadcast my show live from there. And I was very, very new. I was probably in the city maybe 3 weeks or however long it was. And Nate Newton drove out to the remote. He didn't call anyone. And he said, "I had to meet you." He goes, "Girl, I had to meet you." He came right up to interrupted the broadcast. And everybody's laughing. And I mean, it was good radio, because he just demanded to come on the radio with me, because he said, "I got to meet this broad on the radio, blah, blah, blah." And that's how it really was for me. So the support was there. And I think it's because they figured, if you have enough chops or bravado or whatever it is to do what you're doing, then we're in, unless you're ridiculous, which of course it wasn't about that. It was about backing up your opinion, saying what you thought, that kind of thing.
And who was going to tell Nate Newman that he couldn't come in?
Not at that time. He wasn't skinny then. He was big.
I drawing a picture in my head when you was telling me all this, because it's almost like, okay, Nate Newton sealed this thing, and it almost became like, okay, now the team is going to huddle around you. You're one of us, we're one of you. Boy, girl, don't make no difference. This is how it is. That had to give you a warm, fuzzy feeling.
It did, because I realized again that I had the passion for doing this. I wanted to do it, or why would I do it? And I felt accepted enough that, hey, I ended up flying with the Cowboys some of the time. I covered the Dallas Stars. I covered the Mavericks. I mean, because that's all what I would be talking about. And a couple of times, I would talk about being from Philadelphia, and they would give me so much grief about that. I told Roger Staubach, I had him on a show, and I said, we used to throw, and I said, he was before my time, but I said, trust me, I knew who you were. We used to throw footballs at your face in a tire. And he goes, "Oh, really?" And so he used to joke me a lot about Philly and how hated that rivalry was between them and whatever. But so even the old guard, and then the newer players, and then the younger players coming up, as long as, again, I did what I was doing and paid attention to what was going on, and I wasn't frivolous. I mean, I was funny. I did Sports Jeopardy, and Barry Switzer was the coach at the time, and he wrote me a note that, "Thanks, I love Sports Jeopardy," because he was getting hounded because the Dallas media didn't like him. But so I did funny things, and clever. I tried to be clever because I like the humor side. But I'd have players on, and I always I think, got probably for the most part their respect.
I was going to ask you a question, and my one half brain cell just went completely dim, Kate. But it might come back when that puppy goes out. It goes out. When it fires up, I mean, she fires up. You you have interviewed literally thousands of people in your career. Uh, Tell me about just some of them.
Let's see. Ooh, it's always so hard to do this because I'll tell you a good one. This was and this was thanks to a producer that worked with me that was being really aggressive. I was going down to spring training for the Texas Rangers, and she got me an interview with Ted Williams. And of course, Ted Williams hardly did any interviews, especially later in his later years. His son was kind of the gatekeeper, and they didn't do many interviews. They did an interview with Bob Costas on NBC and a few others. So I did an interview with him, and it was amazing. He talked about fly fishing. He talked about how lucky he was. He talked about he didn't even want to talk that much about baseball, but he did. He talked about Marilyn Monroe. I mean, just blew my mind. And I was in the Rangers office. They arranged that I could do my show from their office so I could hear and pay attention to what was going on with him. So that was pretty exciting to do that interview because he was a legend, and it was at the tail end of his life and his career. Also, I interviewed, let's see, any of the tennis greats, Roger Federer, who I've seen play a few times, just a tremendous guy. I mean, there's someone who's worth a ridiculous amount of money and has crazy, wild skills, will probably go down as one of the greatest male tennis players of all time. And this is a guy who pays attention to all the ball boys, throws them pizza parties, treats them right, doesn't act like, well, I'm on my jet and I'm going back. I'm Swiss and I'm so big and I hang around with Anna Wintour and all the big muckety mucks. And that was pretty impressive to see how he was normal. And I think that's what I look for. And I interviewed Joe Namath. We were going up an escalator together. It was at one of the Super Bowls, and he said, "Oh, I'll talk to you. Come on." He goes, "Ride this escalator with me." And of course, everybody wanted to be near him. So he was telling them, "Get away. She's talking to me. Leave her alone. Get away." It was just the funniest thing. So there were some funny moments that happened too during some of those interviews. And, Yankees, Philadelphia Phillies. I was a little kid when Mike Schmidt was the third baseman for the Phillies. And I interviewed him, and he was so nice. And he's like, "Oh, don't tell me you were 5 when I played, right?" And I was telling him how I just loved him, and I had his picture on my wall, and he signed a baseball. He said, "I'm going to sign a baseball for you. Don't throw this away." And he was kidding with me and kibitzing, and just to interview him, this was like my childhood, and it was so cool. So I feel really fortunate to have interviewed a lot of the people that I've interviewed. And some of them also rock stars in business. Richard Branson, who's just a cut up. I mean, if you try to play one up with him, he will knock you down because he has a sense of humor like nobody I've ever met.
Have there been times in your life where Kate went home or back to her hotel if she was traveling and threw herself backwards on the bed and just grabbed her head and said, "I can't believe that this is really happening"? Have there been times that it almost like you stepped out of this world into that world and all of a sudden you can't believe it?
I've had a few moments like that. You mentioned you mentioned the book, and when I was doing the book, it really hit me then. Because when you're in it, you're not thinking about it. You're doing your show, and I wasn't thinking about it. I'm just thinking about having a good show because it was one show, then another show, then another show, and who's the guest, and what am I doing, and what am I prepping for, and what's going on. And I think when I took that look back and I started to see the publicity, and I was on a couple of magazine covers where I was like, whoa, wow, I really lived what I said I was gonna live. And it's that happened. And then when I was on that big stage that you saw, it was Leader Cast, and they were all rock star women that were behind me. They called me up and asked me to open. I thought, wow, open when you have these, billionaires row and we're all friends with Oprah. I think I'm the only one in the whole thing that doesn't know Oprah. And when I did that, that hit me too, because I realized, and it was about the things that had happened in my career and what can I show you that could help you. And that day hit me pretty big too.
Thousands of interviews, 15 Super Bowls. Uh, that in and of itself is is amazing. Uh, World Series, tennis, U.S. Opens. Have you ever had the opportunity to interview Tiger Woods?
One time, it's funny you asked me that. One time I did, and it was in the beginning of my career, and he was already pretty much a superstar, and he had entourages around him, but not quite like he did after he had had a bunch of more masters under his belt. And I had a chance to interview him. They pulled him aside at the Byron Nelson, and that was in Dallas. And I had a chance to talk to him, and he was really nice when I talked to him, and we just chatted about what he had done that day and whatnot. And he was friendly and answered the questions, and it was a good experience. It was for maybe 5 or 6 minutes. I mean, now pretty much it's like Jordan Spieth or Dustin Johnson or any of those guys. They're all in situations where you have a whole room full of reporters or a handful of reporters, golf writers, radio people. You don't get as many one-on-ones.
This coronavirus, I call it the thing. When this thing came down upon us in March, and that's a whole different story. But anyhow, when this thing came down upon us, it turned people's world upside down. What was isn't, what was going on isn't going on, and so on and so forth. The economical impact that just, I was telling my wife the other day, I said, can you just imagine? I said, let's use baseball because I love baseball. Let's take baseball. I said, from spring training, when they go south, those towns, those cities, those vendors, hotels, the whole schmear, they depend on that money. Now all of a sudden, it's gone. And then they move into the season. They come north and go to their home fields. And the enormous impact, restaurants, traveling, everything's like a big domino effect. It just keeps going down, 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 down. There has been some devastation dealt amongst uh, maybe not so much the athletes themselves, but the people that depend upon these things,
Mm.
and so on and so forth. Have you been able to look at that uh, in your travels or during this time of this epidemic?
Oh yeah, it's terrible. I mean, you talk about the little guy, I'll say, for lack of a better way to describe it. But you think of baseball's a great example, 80 plus games at home, where if you're a vendor, you could be the guy walking up and down, killing yourself selling hot dogs, but that's good money and
Yeah.
tips, and that's putting kids through school, and that's paying for extras. And now all of a sudden, poof, poof, it's gone. That hit them really, really hard. And there are a lot of vendors. There are a lot of people that even if it's t-shirts, hats, it can be any aspect of what the game of baseball is. And that was pretty crippling to so many people's livelihoods, so much so that some really super, super, I think, smart and giving athletes who knew they had a lot of money and had a lot to be grateful for tried to support some of those people, like to give some of their salary to them so that they would make some money during a time where they weren't going to make any money. And we don't know how long all of the thing is going to last, as you say. So who knows how long that continues. And it is crippling. And sports really took a kneecap. I mean, in so many ways. And it's all the people surrounding the game, people who, the parking lot attendants.
Yeah.
How many of those? Think of all the major league teams, all the cities. Then think of the minor league teams.
Yeah.
And then also same thing there in these small towns where, hey, if you're making an extra 20, even 30, even I talked to one vendor who was putting kids through school, it was 80 grand. But he was killing himself working, but it was worth it because he was getting his kids through school on the second job. And now all of a sudden that's gone. That's tough.
Yeah. Uh, Heartbreak. Then you think about the emotional, the mental effects that this has on people just like that. Uh, Devastating. I mean, there's so many avenues to go down. There's no one in society that hasn't been touched and affected by this thing. Uh, it's just devastating. Let me ask you this question: our whole American culture has been football, basketball, baseball, the whole 9 yards. Every one of us grew up with sports, whether our favorite was one or the other, but we were all in one way, shape, or form involved in sports. It's just our culture. There was something about, and I grew up not far from Pittsburgh, so I would go to Old Forbes Field, and I got to see some of the greatest. The Willie Mays and Henry Aaron's and uh, Lou Burdett's and Warren. I mean, I could just name them. But it was like you could step out of this world over here and step into the baseball arena, and it was like that world went far, far away. And now, for the next several hours, this was your world, and you didn't want to come out of it. It was a time of people that just could leave all their earthly problems out there and come in, sit down, relax, watch, cheer, get involved, so on and so forth. And now it's not there. The noise of the crowd, the smell of the hot dog, the smell of the grass, the dirt, you know, it's not there. Do you think somewhere along the way that politics got involved in sports, or sports got involved in politics, and it's kind of made it uh, somewhat yucky sometimes?
Oh, absolutely. And then some of the decisions that are made, instead of, okay, you deal with the game and all the nuances of the game and all of that. Now you throw politics in the middle of it and make it walk. Or am I walking a tightrope? And do I have to choose a side? Because I think politics is like sports now. It's you against me, us and them. That's it. And the same thing. But it used to just be you painted a great picture, George, that you could escape from all of the other noise by being involved in sports, and you could argue about, let's say it's baseball, strikes and balls. You could argue about things that happen. Was that really a home run inside the park, whatever.
Right.
Now it's beyond that. Now it's so much more. And some people would say, well, yeah, it's about time, because what about what's happening in our culture? But then on the other side of it, it's also torn at the fabric of, gosh, can we just go and when can we just go and watch the game? That's why I got hammered by a post I made about Major League Baseball, saying that, hey, they're trying to do this right by going back even without fans, because at least you can escape in your mind by watching some games or listening to it on the radio or whatever, and we can get back to that. And I got hammered by a few people saying, who cares about sports and who cares about it now? We're in this pandemic. And I'm like, yeah, mentally, we're all getting hammered. We need to escape. It's better for us for our families and for the people around us, just in general, to have some kind of an outlet, and that's sports. So I think it's good.
Kate, uh, I grew up. We had one radio or one television station and an outside antenna that somebody had to go out and turn it, and everybody else holler, "Okay, hold it right there." But we had one. Saturday afternoon, uh, the baseball game come on, and Dizzy Dean and Pee Wee Reese was the guys that called the game. Uh, but it was purity. It was pure baseball, pure football. Yeah, and you're right. You go to the baseball game and holler at the ump. You're blind, and you know you need three pairs of glasses, and you'd argue with the people that was rooting for the other team. Now that's all gone. It was all release for us back then. Now there's no release. And when you said we could watch a game, listen to a game, I can remember we listened to a lot of baseball games on the radio. Somebody sitting on their porch that had the radio on. We'd be listening to the Pirates. Uh, Kids would have transistor radios. We'd be listening to Bob Prince, uh, listening to the Pirates and stuff. And on a clear night, you'd get a New York station. You might hear the Yankees playing, or something. That's when you really got lucky. Or a St. Louis team. But it was all purity, and there was no muckety muck in it. It was just all pure. Take me out to the ball game. Take me out to the crowd, and that's what it was all about. And personally, I think that's what it should be. It should be a place that we can go, another world that we can go into, and shut out the noise and all the hammering that goes on out here. Enough is enough already. So, Kate, man, I could talk to you I could talk to you forever about this stuff. You've got to promise me you'll come back again.
I will come back again, George. You're a delight. It was so fun. It was fun being with you. I like the way that you look at the world.
Yeah. Uh, my wife of 52 years, she has a whole different outlook on what you just said. And that's a great compliment. That's a great compliment. Uh, but it is. It's been so much fun. So much fun. I wish you only the best. I really do. Uh, you just keep going out there and just getting it done. And young people, old people, somewhere in between. If you're watching and listening to this tonight, or you watch a replay of this, please remember, put your head down and just plow through. Don't take no for an answer. Don't let the naysayers bite you in the butt. Just go for it and have fun. If that's your heartbeat, go for it, because you won't be happy until you do. And when you plow through something, then you look back and think, man, that was tough, but you know what? That was fun. I'd like to see the looks on some of those people, uh, some of those rejectionists that that either told you by voice on telephone or in notes and letters, nah, uh, just totally rejected. I'd like to see the look on their faces as Kate plowed through and made it step by step. That would be one of those TV commercials that would be priceless, absolutely priceless. Kate, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, George.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, friends and Romans and countrymen, whether you're down the street, around the corner, across America, or somewhere around this great big world, thank you for taking the time to spend this hour with Kate and myself and this whole crazy bunch here behind me at the Funny Farm. And Wednesday night, we'll be having my friend Peter Acola out of Massachusetts. I call him the Music Man, and he is the ambassador of goodwill. A lot of things I can tell you about Peter that he's done for a lot of people in his area during this thing that has fallen down upon us. He has uplifted so many people with his music, with all the kind things that he's done. He'll be with me Wednesday night at 8 p.m. And we'll talk about his family that just made a big batch of sauce. And as far as I know, he's sending me some. And oh, do I love sauce and pasta and hot peppers and all those good things. So join me Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. All righty, Kate. hats off to you. Cheers and all those good things. And I'll be anticipating that you come back soon. Good night, everybody. God love you.